So this one starts with a zeroth album. It throws together their earliest single and EP tracks. If you're at all familiar with the sound of later Hot Hot Heat, then you may be surprised by this. Unless you're a real muso and you pause the video for about 10 minutes to really think about it, because this is experimental post-hardcore without a guitar. Bass guitar, just not a standard guitar. There's an organ in its place. You can hear that in the later Hot Hot Heat. You can see where they're from and when they're from, and how there's a prominent keyboard and the jagged, yelpy nature of their sound. But that still doesn't quite prepare you for exactly how sasscore they were. Before noticing the lack of guitar, you'll notice the different singer, a post-hardcore screamer, and his lack of vocal range does hold this collection down, but the organ, drums, and bass work is really impressive. They were very good at this sound. The right person left. They could have continued in this genre, but maybe they just didn't have more to express with it, or maybe they wanted to make money, or just make something more pleasant to listen to. Like, as an album collection, this is a bit overwhelming, because the tracks are all about those short bursts. But really, it's still an undervalued gem of the genre. I think it gets neglected because anyone into Hot Hot Heat's later work wouldn't necessarily be compatible with this. Yeah, when I say how good this is, that doesn't mean it's as fun to listen to. It needs the certain context, but it is a great and inventive, if not vocally, example of the genre they were rocking at the time. This is hectic, excited sasscore. So now here's an EP with one of those awesome little CDs. Love that stuff. Steve taking over on vocals means we can now have more than 2 notes. And though the expression is more mainstream, it's less poser. This is a great little EP that keeps the danger of their sound, but just really increases the fun. EPs in this series often end up quite low down because they don't have that much to offer, but you can just play this twice as much and it's that good. Then we've got album 1, a sub-pop sensation, a pitchfork high score, one of those early 2000s bands where everyone who discovered it on a forum at the time really loves the debut, and the only thing they can say about any of their other works is that it's not as good as the debut. I think I'm not that receptive to consensus. This is a full length of the kind of material that made that EP, but just with less focus. I know that's heresy, but this series is for me to express what I feel. It's still good, the singles really shine, there's nicely ambitious rhythmic range to it. The music and the lyrics are clever, but they're also repetitive. If they put a bit more time into developing these songs, then I'd rank it higher. I think I could really get in trouble for this. I'm just not as into this repetitive, itchy music, and I prefer this repetitive, itchy music. It's not an easy decision because Scenes isn't an easy listen and maybe shouldn't be in the format of an album, but I think that in overall musical merit it can sit here. Go ahead and hate. I thrive off your hot, hot hate. Then we're going major label. The sound is going one step more mainstream and shedding another band member who was too alternative for it again. But I'm on the side of the music in this dual case. Because what the Heat have honed into is a speedy Costello vibe that's 100% hooks, full of wordplay whose appeal doesn't wear off, and the music feels witty too. It now feels built around Steve's voice rather than for his voice to strain at the edges of. This album is determined for every second to be great, and in every second it succeeds. And if you thought that major label turn was selling out, then get ready for the "you're not selling enough on the major labels, so they need you to really sell out" album. And yet that still suits the Heat. They deliver that with a lot of dignity. Not enough dignity to stop the cover art being them standing around in a composite image in a, dull industrial place, with one of them facing 90 degrees the wrong direction for no reason at all. What distracts one band member in most photos? It's bookended by some heartbreak trudge that doesn't really serve. There's a Heartbreak Trudge in the middle that does serve an essential lead single, and some things that may have been singles I'll have to check that are also essential. Most of this is a great version of What It Is, the closest they've come to stadium rock, and it's a pretty good version of what Hot Hot Heat are. And you know what comes after trying to go mainstream, right? Because trying to go mainstream is almost always failing to go mainstream. So it's bad news for a band's income and their contract with a major label, but good news for creativity. Future Breeds brings back a hectic vibe to the Heat sound. At just the right time. If they'd headed further in the major label trajectory, then they would have ended up as medium pace, accessible stadium rock. Kind of unremarkable. As listeners, we've now been treated to the best of both ends. This album feels real intoxicated, it's like murky and staggering and weird. They've brought back the rhythmic variety, but now it's not just the Latin presets your drum machine can do, it's a diversity of time signatures and new ideas for rock music. This is the sound of the Heat cutting loose and using all of their strengths with no real regard for who the listener might be, but that makes it all the more inclusive to someone who's kept up with their vibes. And, crucially, those who haven't, because this is like what they were doing in the early days, but by guys a decade older with nothing to lose. Then a lot of time passed and a lot of the chance of them keeping this as their full-time career passed before a Kiss-Off Finale self-titled album where they'd already accepted defeat before going into the studio, but it was worth doing a victory lap, a defeat lap. Every album I've shown so far strikes quite a distinct vibe and then offers a full set of that vibe. But the new vibe of this one, even with all the years passing, is just what they were doing last time, but more mellow, more resigned. Which kind of leaves it without a distinctive appeal, because the appeal of this was how hyperactive it was, and this is like taking speed, then sedatives. It's still a respectable set and a pleasant gift to their listeners rather than just breaking up in poverty and spending the last of it on making an album. But there's just not that much of it, not that much to it, and not much need for it as a listener. Steve's not stopped making music. I'm not throwing other stuff into this video because this is about hot heat. But that stuff's worth keeping up with, and this stuff is worth binging. I've not put this on in ages. I'm gonna get rid of this because I just don't wear this kind of thing anymore. If I wear more than one layer, I sweat way too much, and it doesn't feel right just wearing this with nothing underneath. I'll give this away, and let's see if I can show you the back of it without knocking the camera. My very curvy back. Oh hi, I didn't notice you there.